The warning said to stay inside, avoid travel. But I thought a secluded cabin in a blizzard would be romantic. I was dead wrong. Here are 3 true horror stories from people who got snowed in and realized they weren't alone. This story comes from a guy named Thomas. He's 32, works in IT, lives in Denver. Last February, he booked a cabin in the Rockies for a solo writing retreat. He'd been working on a novel for 3 years and needed to finish it. The cabin was perfect. 2 bedrooms, full kitchen, wood-burning stove, completely isolated. The nearest neighbor was 4 miles away down a Forest Service road. The weather forecast looked fine when he drove up. Clear skies, cold but manageable. He arrived on a Thursday afternoon, unpacked his clothes, set up his laptop on the kitchen table, made coffee, started writing. By 6 p.m., the sun was setting and the temperature had dropped to 15 degrees. Thomas added more wood to the stove and kept working. Around 9 p.m., he noticed something odd. The cabin had 2 bedrooms. He was using the one on the left as his room. The one on the right he'd left empty. But when he got up to use the bathroom, he noticed the door to the empty bedroom was closed. He was sure he'd left it open. Thomas walked over and opened the door. The room was empty, just a bed with no sheets and an old dresser, nothing unusual. He left the door open and went back to writing. At 11 p.m., the weather changed. Snow started falling, not gentle flakes, heavy snow, the kind that comes down so thick you can't see 10 feet in front of you. Thomas checked his phone. No signal. He'd been warned about that. The cabin was in a dead zone. He wasn't worried. He had food for a week, plenty of firewood stacked on the porch. He could wait out any storm. He went to bed around midnight. The wind was howling outside. The cabin creaked and groaned, but it felt solid, safe. Thomas fell asleep quickly. He woke up at 3:17 a.m. The cabin was completely dark. The power had gone out. Not unusual during a storm. He had a flashlight on the nightstand. He clicked it on and swept the beam around his room. Everything looked normal. Then he heard it. Footsteps coming from the hallway. Slow, deliberate, walking from one end to the other. Thomas sat up in bed. His heart was pounding. He called out, "Hello?" No answer. The footsteps stopped. He waited. 30 seconds. A minute. Nothing. He convinced himself it was the wind. Old cabins make weird noises. He turned off the flashlight and tried to go back to sleep. Then he heard the door, the empty bedroom door. It slammed shut, not like the wind caught it, a hard, deliberate slam. Thomas grabbed his flashlight and got out of bed. He walked into the hallway. Both bedroom doors were closed now, his and the empty one. He opened the empty bedroom door. The room was freezing, colder than the rest of the cabin. His breath came out in thick clouds. The window was closed, no drafts, but the temperature in that room felt 20 degrees lower than everywhere else. Thomas shined his flashlight around. The bed, the dresser, the closet, empty. He was about to leave when he noticed something. There were wet footprints on the floor, leading from the window to the door. Not snow, not water, something darker. He bent down and touched one. It was ice cold and sticky. When he pulled his hand back, his fingers were red. Thomas backed out of the room and closed the door. He went to the kitchen and grabbed the largest knife from the drawer. Then he checked every window and door in the cabin, all locked, all secure. The snow outside was already 3 feet deep and still falling. No one could have gotten in. No one could have left those footprints. He sat at the kitchen table with the knife and his flashlight and waited for morning. At 4 a.m., he heard the footsteps again. This time, they were right outside his bedroom door, walking back and forth for 20 minutes. Then they stopped. The empty bedroom door opened. Thomas could hear it from where he was sitting, the hinges creaking, then footsteps walking into that room. The door closed. Silence. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. When the sun came up, he immediately started packing. The snow had stopped, but it was waist-deep outside. He'd have to dig out his car. He opened the empty bedroom one last time before leaving. The room was back to normal temperature. No footprints, no blood, nothing. But on the wall above the bed, someone had written something in what looked like condensation. 3 words: "Stay with me." Thomas spent 4 hours digging out his car. He drove straight home and never went back. He later found out the cabin's previous renter had been a woman in her 20s who'd gone missing during a storm the year before. They found her body in spring, 2 miles from the cabin, frozen. She'd walked out into the blizzard wearing only a nightgown. The autopsy said she'd been dead for 3 days before she left the cabin. They never explained that part. Have you ever stayed somewhere and felt like you weren't alone? Let me know below. All right, story number 2. This story is from a woman named Rebecca. She's 28 and works as a veterinarian in rural Wyoming. 3 years ago, she was driving home from an emergency call when the blizzard hit. It came out of nowhere. 1 minute, the roads were clear. The next minute, she couldn't see past her hood. The wind was pushing her truck sideways. She knew she couldn't make it home. She needed to find shelter immediately. That's when she saw the farmhouse. It was set back from the road about 100 yards. Old, 2 stories, white paint peeling, but the porch light was on. Someone was home. Rebecca pulled into the driveway and ran through the snow to the front door. She knocked hard, waited. No answer. She knocked again. The wind was screaming. Her fingers were already going numb. She tried the door handle. Unlocked. She pushed it open and called inside. "Hello? I need help. My truck can't make it through the storm." No response, but the lights were on inside. The heat was running. Rebecca stepped inside and closed the door behind her. The house was warm, almost too warm. She called out again, "Is anyone home?" Nothing. She walked through the entryway into the living room. Old furniture, floral wallpaper, a TV playing the Weather Channel with the volume on mute, a half-eaten sandwich on a TV tray, like someone had just gotten up and walked away. Rebecca checked her phone. No signal. Of course. She decided to wait. Maybe whoever lived here was in the bathroom or upstairs. She sat down on the couch. After 10 minutes, she got up and looked around. The kitchen had dishes in the sink, coffee in the pot still warm, a calendar on the wall with today's date circled, appointments written in neat handwriting. 8 a.m. dentist, noon feed chickens, 3 p.m. check fence line. Someone definitely lived here, but where were they? Rebecca went to the stairs and called up. "Hello? I'm sorry to intrude. I just need to wait out the storm." Silence. She climbed the stairs slowly. At the top was a hallway with 3 doors, 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. The first bedroom was empty. Made bed, old photos on the dresser, a man and woman in their 70s, smiling. The second bedroom was the same, empty, neat, undisturbed. The bathroom was empty too. Rebecca went back downstairs. She was alone in the house. But that didn't make sense. The TV was on. The coffee was fresh. The sandwich was half-eaten. Someone had been here minutes before she arrived. She looked out the front window. The snow was already covering her truck, the driveway, everything. She was stuck here until the storm passed. Rebecca decided to make herself comfortable. She found blankets in a closet, made more coffee, sat on the couch and watched the Weather Channel. The blizzard was expected to last until morning. Around 6 p.m. she heard something, a door closing, upstairs. She muted the TV and listened. Footsteps, walking across the floor above her, slow and heavy, back and forth. Someone was up there. Rebecca stood up. "Hello? I called out earlier. I'm sorry to intrude. My truck couldn't make it through the storm." The footsteps stopped, then started again, walking to the stairs. Rebecca watched the staircase, waiting for someone to appear. The footsteps came down, 1 step, 2 steps, 3, but nobody appeared. The footsteps continued down the stairs. She could hear each creak, each groan of old wood, but the staircase was empty. The footsteps reached the bottom, walked past her, through the living room, into the kitchen. She heard the refrigerator open, close, heard a glass being set on the counter, heard water running in the sink. But when she walked into the kitchen, no one was there. The glass on the counter was full of water, still rippling like someone had just poured it. Rebecca grabbed her coat and went to the front door. She'd rather risk the storm than stay in this house. But when she tried to open the door, it wouldn't budge. Not locked, just stuck. She pulled harder. Nothing. The snow outside had drifted against the door. She was trapped. She ran to the back door. Same problem. Snow had blocked both exits. She tried the windows, frozen shut, every single one. She was locked inside. The footsteps started again upstairs, walking back and forth, then down the stairs, through the living room, right past her. So close, she could feel the air move. This continued all night. Footsteps, doors opening and closing, the TV changing channels by itself, lights turning on and off. Rebecca sat in the corner of the living room with a fireplace poker, watching, waiting. At 3 a.m. she heard something new, a voice, an old man's voice, coming from upstairs. He was singing, an old folk song, the same verse over and over. When the snow falls deep and the wind howls cold, stay inside where you won't grow old. Rebecca didn't sleep. When the sun came up, the storm had passed. The doors opened easily. She ran to her truck and drove straight to town. She told the sheriff what happened. He drove out to the farmhouse with her. The place was abandoned, had been for 5 years. No heat, no electricity, no water. The TV was smashed, the furniture covered in dust. The coffee pot was rusted and empty. No sandwich, no glass of water, nothing. The sheriff told her the previous owners had died in a blizzard. They'd been trapped inside when the power went out, froze to death waiting for help. They found them sitting in the living room, still in their chairs, holding hands. The calendar in the kitchen was still on the wall, with today's date, circled. Have you ever been trapped somewhere during a storm? Drop your story in the comments. If you're still watching, hit that like button. All right, final story. This final story comes from a couple, Jake and Maria, both in their early 30s. They'd booked a weekend at a mountain lodge in Vermont for their anniversary. The place was expensive, but worth it. 5-star reviews, private rooms, gourmet meals, spa services. They arrived on Friday afternoon. The weather was cold but clear. The lodge was beautiful. Stone exterior, massive windows, a huge common area with a fireplace. There were 6 other guests staying that weekend. Everyone seemed friendly. The owner was a woman in her 50s named Catherine, professional, welcoming. Friday night was perfect. Dinner was incredible. Wine by the fire, conversation with other guests. Jake and Maria went to bed happy. They woke up Saturday morning to snow, heavy snow. Catherine announced at breakfast that the forecast had changed. A massive storm system was moving in. They might be snowed in for a few days, but not to worry. The lodge had a backup generator, plenty of food. They'd all be comfortable. Most of the guests seemed fine with this. One couple decided to try to leave before the roads got too bad. They packed up and drove off around 10 a.m. By noon, the storm had arrived. Wind shaking the windows, snow coming down so hard you couldn't see the trees 50 feet away. The remaining guests gathered in the common area. Catherine served hot chocolate and soup. Everyone was in good spirits. Around 2 p.m., the power went out. Catherine started the generator. Lights came back on. Heat stayed running. Everything seemed fine. Then, around 4 p.m., one of the guests noticed something. The couple who'd left that morning, their car was in the parking lot, buried in snow, but they'd left hours ago, before the storm hit. Catherine looked confused. She said they must have come back. Maybe the roads were too bad. She went to check their room. She came back white-faced. The couple was in their room, in bed, not moving. Catherine called for help, but the phone lines were down. 2 of the male guests went upstairs with her. Jake was one of them. They opened the door to the couple's room. Both of them were in bed, covers pulled up, eyes closed, like they were sleeping. But their skin was gray, cold. They'd been dead for hours. Their bodies were frozen solid. Jake backed out of the room. How was this possible? The couple had left at 10 a.m. It was 4 p.m. They'd been gone 6 hours, but their bodies looked like they'd been frozen for days. Catherine locked the door and told everyone to stay calm. They'd wait for the storm to pass, then get help. But everyone was terrified. They gathered in the common area. No one wanted to be alone. Around 7 p.m., the generator died. Complete darkness. Catherine went to check on it. She didn't come back. After 30 minutes, Jake and another guest went looking for her. They found her in the basement, next to the generator, frozen, just like the couple upstairs. Jake ran back upstairs, told Maria and the other guests. Everyone started panicking. Someone suggested they all stay together, lock themselves in the common area, wait until morning. They pushed furniture against the doors, kept the fire burning high, but the temperature kept dropping. Even with the fire roaring, their breath was coming out in clouds. The windows started frosting over from the inside. One of the guests said something that made everyone go silent. "We need to count how many of us are here." They counted 8 people, but there should only be 6. Jake and Maria, 4 other guests, 6 total, but there were 8 people in the room. Everyone looked around, trying to figure out who didn't belong. That's when Maria noticed it. Two of the people in the room weren't breathing. Their chests weren't moving. No breath clouds coming from their mouths. They were just standing there, perfectly still, watching. One was standing in the corner. The other was sitting in a chair by the window. As soon as Maria pointed this out, both figures moved, not like people, like they were being pulled by strings, jerking, unnatural. They started walking toward the group. Everyone scattered. Jake grabbed Maria and they ran to their room, locked the door, pushed the dresser against it. They could hear screaming from downstairs, crashing, things breaking, then silence. Maria was crying. Jake tried his phone, no signal. They couldn't call for help, couldn't leave the room. The temperature in their room kept dropping. Ice was forming on the inside of the window. They got under the covers, fully dressed, trying to stay warm. Around midnight, they heard footsteps in the hallway, slow, dragging, like someone was being pulled. The footsteps stopped outside their door. The doorknob turned, locked. Something hit the door. Once, twice. The dresser shook but held. Then they heard the voice, Catherine's voice. "Please let me in. I'm so cold. Please." But Catherine was dead. They'd seen her body. The voice kept begging, crying, scratching at the door. This went on for 3 hours, then stopped. Jake and Maria didn't move, didn't speak, just held each other under the covers. When morning came, the sun was out. The storm had passed. They moved the dresser, opened the door. The hallway was empty. They went downstairs. The common area was destroyed, furniture overturned, blood on the walls, but no bodies. They found the other 4 guests in the basement, huddled together, frozen. The rescue team arrived around noon. They said everyone in the lodge had died from hypothermia, except Jake and Maria. The investigators couldn't explain it. The bodies were frozen solid, but they'd only been without heat for 12 hours. That wasn't enough time for that kind of freezing, not in a building with that much insulation. And there was something else. When they checked the lodge's history, they found records of the same thing happening twice before, in 1987 and 2003, both times during blizzards. Guests found frozen to death, no explanation. The lodge has been closed ever since, but every winter, people report seeing lights in the windows, smoke from the chimney, as if someone's still running the place, still welcoming guests. The local sheriff's department has gone up there to check. They find nothing, just an empty building, frozen solid. But the lights keep appearing, every winter, during storms. That's it for tonight. 3 people who thought they were safe from the storm. Stay warm, stay safe, and subscribe to SpookFeed if you want more stories like these. You never know what's waiting inside when you're trapped by the snow.